Okay. Councillor Carlson, can you hear us now?
I can. Thank you.
Okay, and we can hear you. Councillor Crowson's not back on yet. Nope. Mayor Higgin, can you hear us?
Absolutely, loud and clear, thanks.
Okay, perfect, and we can hear you as well.
I've texted Belinda.
Thank you very much for that. So we'll get back going here then?
Just a minute.
Oh, just a minute.
Wait till we're...
Okay. All right, we're ready to go here. We'll begin with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. So I have a motion here from Deputy Mayor Parker, the consent agenda. Be it resolved, the minutes of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting held on October 13th, 2022 be approved and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Deputy Mayor Parker. Question's been called. All in favor? That passes. And then also from Deputy Mayor Parker, we have the consent agenda. Be it resolved that it's the same. They're both the same. Mm-hmm. Did we not do the adoption of the agenda? Okay. Sorry, I didn't do the adoption of the agenda, so we'll go back and do that. Adoption of the agenda, this coming from me, that the agenda of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting on February 9th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. City Clerk?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. All in favor? Did you have a change to the agenda? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And that passes. And then we've already done the consent agenda. We have no presentations, so we will go on to submissions from Mr. Enns, General Manager, Regulatory Service, with regards to taxi rates and regulation review update. As this is a submission, it was in your agenda package. Has everybody had an opportunity to read through that? So I will read the motion here from Councillor Campbell, Taxi Rates, Regulations and Review Update. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council approve the proposed changes to License Bylaw number 5658. 1. Support a moderate maximum meter rate increase as identified below. Retrips in Lethbridge and within 16 kilometers. A 6.156A2 changed from 31 cents to 34 cents per eighth of a kilometer, which is a 9% increase. B 6.156A3 changed from 75 cents to 83 cents per minute wait time, 10% increase. Retrips outside Lethbridge and area above. 6.156G changed from $1.92 to $2.12 per kilometer, a 10% increase. D 6.156G changed from 75 cents to 83 cents per minute wait time, which is a 10% increase. 2. Increase the taxi cancellation trip charge as identified below. E 6.156A4 changed from $5 to $8, 33% increase. 3. Include provisions to allow taxi drivers to charge deposits. 4, include a $30 meter inspection fee to offset a portion of city cost for inspection, and further direct administration to prepare an amending bylaw to capture said changes. Do we have any questions? Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much, and I may sound like a broken record here. Is there any downfall for us from not even being in this industry of regulating it all? I know we're thinking like years ago when they first got into this consumer protectionism, but with the onset of competition with Uber and taxis, why is the city even involved in the regulation of this business outside of a normal business license?
And that's one of the questions we went out and asked the industry, and we came back. That was the 100% against comments where we got. The industry doesn't seem to like that. They seem to like that there's a set rate, that people know what the maximum is going to be. A number of them charge under that rate, but none of them seemed like they wanted to take advantage of that particular provision in the bylaw. And in our review, the only city we found that did do that was Red Deer. And so we asked them how it was going, and we're not supposed to say too much, but it might not be there much longer, let's say that way. So I guess their experience wasn't as good, but they didn't want us explaining the reasons why behind that, so I'm gonna be confidential on that.
Okay, my follow-up to that is, and I might be speaking like this is such a, what happens if Safeway came to you, No Frills came to you, Real Canadian Superstore said to you, I really want the city of Lethbridge to kind of help us out in saying a minimum price for bread, and I think it would be a really good idea. Can you guys probably help us do that? What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, I tell them I don't have jurisdiction for that. But,
Okay, so
but
what gives them, why did we have jurisdiction in this?
I think it's a standard thing across the industry, and it has been in the past, and I think back in the day, there was some people taking advantage of rates. It's a historical thing. So the industry kind of went to this, and in fact, the industry in some other cities like Calgary and Edmonton and like are much more strict in terms of what they control. You have to buy licenses to get cabs and everything else. So it just appears that this has been an industry that has been highly regulated in some areas, and this is a past practice that continues. But if the majority of the taxi industry indicated to us that they were quite happy with that, then we probably would have gone more into looking into that, but the industry was not interested in that at all.
Okay, so, and my last question, and I appreciate the answers, is it our role to, as a council, to appease the taxi industry by bringing this forward? Is it up to us to say, less government, let them create an association, whatever they want to do outside of city? Is that something that could be done? That
That is totally up to council. It's at the will of council. If council decides that this is an area that and let's just say, we think there's too many regulations out there. We want to look at taking back some of the regulations and letting there be more freedom. That's certainly up to council to decide. You bet.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on Councillor Parker's comments as well, Mr. Enns. You're familiar with the Taxi Commission in both Calgary and Edmonton. They regulate the activities of taxi cabs and so forth. I certainly concur with Councillor Parker's comments. I can't understand why we're actively involved in this. From a historical perspective, okay, let's move forward. What would it take then to do a constructive examination of the taxi industry? In reading through the material here, it indicates that 4 of the 9 companies, I believe, are in favor of some form of regulation of the fares that are asked of taxi companies of customers. What about the other 5? Are they not in favor of it?
Sorry, what was that question? Let's take a look at the questions. Does that come with the engagement local taxi business owners? And what question number is that, please?
What question number? It's my question number 1.
Oh, your question number 1.
Yeah. which says that of the nine taxi cab companies, I believe that there are in the city, 4 of them were in favor of the material that's being proposed in one form or another, but it's mute on the other 5. So were they supportive of it or not?
So, Councillor Middleton Hope, maybe I can answer that question for you.
Yeah.
There's 10 taxi cab companies. We interviewed 8. Of the companies presented, the largest companies are a combination of 2, 3 companies that made the presentation originally. And so the information they brought forward was the rate that was requested. The information collected from every other taxi cab company, and we contacted everyone that was active, provided the opposite information of that.
I guess it goes, well, okay, so.
So you have the rate increase that's requested that came before the SPC.
Right, and the rate increases are not so the company said they wanted X in terms of rate increases. Then administration took it back and have recommended through this material a different fee structure. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
And to
so,
obtain that, we looked at every taxi cab rate within the province of Alberta.
so the taxi cab companies come to us and say, or when they're interviewed, they say, this is what we think our industry can support, and we go back and we say, we know better?
That was a request from, was it 3 individuals originally?
I think that the answer to that question really is our bylaw doesn't list a minimum rate, it lists a maximum rate.
Yeah.
Of the companies interviewed, most were going to indicate that they would not raise their rates. However, the companies that made the presentation requesting the rates, we had to appease that portion as well.
And if I may add to that as well, we took a look at the industry and we looked, well, first of all, we looked at the comparison of our rates to other cities. And you'll notice from our report that they are quite a bit higher. Now, the taxi companies did put in their report the reasons why. Calgary and Edmonton have longer fares. They have the big airport fares. Red Deer has a lot of oil workers and the like, and they mentioned Suffield. I don't know if Suffield's still operating in Medicine Hat, but they'd mentioned that in the report as well. And that is totally true. However, it is quite, even before the request, we still have the highest rates out there, right? So we looked at it, we looked at what, we canvassed the industry, see what they said, and the numbers said they didn't need to increase the maximum, but when we looked at what was happening outside, a number of other communities were also increasing theirs, and they were increasing it roughly between 10 and 15%. And we also looked at the inflation costs that the taxi industry is dealing with. And it's true, from insurance to gasoline to everything. So we felt, looking at the numbers and looking at what the standard increase has been, we wanted to give some support to the industry because they're indicating to us that they're having difficulty getting drivers and the like. They need a boost. There's no doubt about it. But in talking to the industry and what some of the other companies that didn't make the presentation and looking at the comparison rates, we felt that our recommendation of the 9 to 10% increase was fair for both the taxi companies, but also for those individuals who rely on taxis to get their groceries and the like. And there's a number of individuals out there that can't afford a car and the like, and they use a taxi to get groceries and some other things. So we didn't believe that it's not a belief, it's just that we felt that this was a fair thing, that the industry could get a boost, but it wouldn't be such a huge boost to some people that this would really affect their bottom line. Okay,
I'm sorry. I appreciate the discussion. I think it's certainly a fulsome response. I just don't get it. I don't know why we're involved in it. I don't know why we're dictating to the taxi industry what they can charge for a fare. I think Councillor Parker's comment about the grocery stores, would we get involved in that? No. I can see it from a safety perspective, ensuring things like for the customers, you know, whether we say screens are important, or signage on the top of the vehicles, or painting and decals with numbers and so forth, and fair, fair warning of what the costs are going to be. Regulating those kinds of things I can understand, but what they charge for a fare, I find that hard to comprehend. And I'm not sure why we're still in the business.
And I totally understand that, and I know government's going in and out of looking at whether they've over-regulated too much, or should they be in this area, not that area, and that's quite fine. We presented the information based on our recommendation, based on what the questions were. But if this council decides that that's the route they want to go, that's fine. That's a policy issue. That's not an administration issue.
Interested to hear what the taxi cab companies have to say.
Well, there is one here today.
And we will get to that.
Yeah.
I've got a few other questions here from council for Mr. Enns. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for my clarity, can you guys explain to me what is the problem that we are going to solve with this new bylaw? What is the main issue, and what are we going to solve? And is it as it pertains to our economic situation we're in February of 2023?
I'm having a tough time with the problem. What it is a request came for certain increases and certain rules, and what we did, I don't know if it's a problem. It's a request from the industry, from some in the industry said that they're having a tough time making a go of it, right? And like I mentioned, they're having everyone's having a tough time getting employees and the like. They have to pay a wage so that they can get good people to come, right? And they do have, like we all do, we've all been paying bigger bills every year here the last few years. They have inflationary problems. So their problem that they wanted to solve is they wanted to get some more money. And another issue came up, well, why we're involved, but that's separate, and council can decide on that on their own. So what we looked at, whether or not we thought the request was a reasonable request, and whether it's in line with other communities in the province, and what the industry itself, we got feedback from as many people as we could talk to, came back to us, what they thought, right? So we came back with what we thought was in line with what other cities are doing. We thought that it gives a significant enough increase so that these companies can deal with some of their bottom line financial issues. But we also recognize that we do charge the highest rates, I think, in the whole province. And there's reasons for that, okay? That I don't want to knock the industry. They indicate they don't have as long a rides as some of the other cities, and that's probably correct. But we did not want, looking at it, to just say that, yeah, whatever, right? We had to say, is it in line with what others? What kind of cost? And you'll see at the end when we show the comparison of from City Hall to locations, right? The difference between what was requested and what we have. And it doesn't seem like a large amount maybe to some, but for some individuals out there who are watching the pennies and do have to take the taxi to go get groceries or whatever, right? I think they're not going to be happy that they got this raise, but I think it's a reasonable raise given what other inflationary pressures are out there right now.
So if we said as a council, throw away this bylaw, we're not in the taxi business industry, what happens to the taxi business in Lethbridge? Do they create their own organization, or do they just say, well, it's free for them, let's go?
Outside of provincial regulations that dictate class of license to operate the vehicle, class of plate and insurance that are required to operate the vehicle, the city of Lethbridge essentially could be out of the taxi business, and there is nothing that would require the taxi industry itself to create an association or a set of regulations.
Just one quick, you mentioned in the summary that one company folded, the A1, is it A1? Sorry.
So one of the...
They got bought out?
Yeah, so since this application, and Mr. RN can speak to that as well, the presentation. So when the question came forward, there were a number of companies and larger companies within the city of Lethbridge. They have since amalgamated, some have closed. Our taxi industry is a very open market, which means we do not regulate the number of taxi cab companies, we do not regulate the number of taxi cab cars. So it really is based on the success of each of the business. So business is open and business is closed. In this case here, from the time that the information came forward, there has been an industry shift with the companies that have come forward making the request for the increased rates.
Right. And one final thought, if I may, just remind me, the Uber and Lyft, are they, would they still be, I don't think they either of them exist right now, do they, Lethbridge? I don't.
They are, so.
But if they are, do they fall under the same legislation?
No, they don't. So.
And why is that?
So, because the province created what's called Transportation Network Company Regulations for the specific reasons to differentiate a ride-share service versus a ride-hailing service. And the difference between the two is a ride-share is somebody that can use their own car, that you can sign up with a company that is provincially licensed and meeting a whole host of provincial requirements in order to provide that service. And then a ride-hail is where a taxi cab company can pick up any type of fare, inclusive of a drop fare. So in Uber, you don't stand outside of an evening out and jump into an Uber and arrange that time. Now, you could certainly do it from inside the establishment by hiring that Uber to be there, but that is the quintessential difference between a transportation network company vehicle and a taxi, and that is consistent not only in the province of Alberta, but in every province that has created legislation for transportation network companies.
If I could just add to that as well, there was, and I can't remember, it was like 4 years or so ago.
Are you talking about numbers? We have very few transportation network companies operating in Lethbridge. We had a presentation by Uber to create transportation network regulations, which we did, and they are supplementary to really the provincial regulations. So a transportation network company, all they need is a City of Lethbridge business license and to provide proof that they're licensed provincially. In Lethbridge, because of how we have set up the taxi industry as being flexible to be able to allow companies to grow, expand, new companies to come in, there are very few, if any, Ubers available. The most we've ever seen is 3.
And there was a presentation a number of years ago where Uber came in and there was a whole discussion about this, about whether we wanted, in addition to all the provincial regulations, because there's a lot of provincial regulations in that area, whether the city wanted to put different, larger or more regulations on, and council at the time voted against that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come from a different angle here. Imagine there was no taxis. There was no such thing as taxis and nothing like that in today's economy and nothing like that. And someone came to the front of the counter and said, I want to talk to Mr. Enns or Mr. Henley. I want to create a transportation company, but I want you guys to set prices. There's a price of a maximum. What would you say to them? Because you're getting caught in your historical, we are, as a corporation, are getting caught up in historical, what we've done in the past. But imagine if we didn't have this, and someone just says, Kim, I want to create this thing called a taxi where I pick up someone, and I was hoping in today's world you would probably just say, well, you need a business license because you have a business in this community, but Mr. Thompson or Mrs. Johnson, you want to start your company, you can charge whatever you want. So I want you to take away everything you've known in the past, and imagine if it was a new idea.
Well, first of all, I would not be surprised because every second day someone's coming asking me for new regulations. It seems we're in an era of regulations where one side wants to control everything and another side says, leave us alone, government, and we're kind of stuck in the middle. So that wouldn't surprise me. But if someone came, obviously I would say, well, why should we get in this industry if it hasn't been in the industry before? But there was a time when the city of Lethbridge wasn't in this industry that much. It did have inspections for making sure that the meter's still there and everything else. But some of the other stuff that we have with the lights and everything else, we were very under-regulated. And then there was some incidents that occurred, and what brought it up originally, some of these bigger regulations, that was, what, like a decade or so ago, I think? Anyway, there's some serious incidents or whatever, and people said, we want more regulation. So I would probably tell the individuals, no, that's not an area that, if it's not a historical thing, why would we need it? But I would assume there'd be people on the other side that would come to you folks and say, hey, we do need it, and this is the reason why.
Okay, so, but what I'm saying is, I understand regulations, like exactly what Councillor Milton Hope said, like you gotta make sure the meter's working properly. Just like the food inspectors go into McDonald's to make sure all their stuff's operated properly, Alberta Health Services is gonna do all that. The city does have a role to make sure that the meter's running properly, that people are not being gouged in regards to that kind of stuff. But if I came to that till and I said, Mr. Enns, I know you're really good at what you do you think that this city should be in charge of making sure that no one charges more than this amount? What would you say in today's world if you didn't know anything in the past?
I would say, give me a list of the reasons why you want that in place. What are the problems that has been caused because we don't have anything in place? Give me a list, and then I can tell you whether or not we can look into it. That's probably what I'd tell them at the point. If there's no previous history, what problem are we trying to solve? People are coming all the time for us, and to you folks as well. I know you guys are getting a lot wanting, this regulated and that regulated, and we always ask, okay, is there another jurisdiction that's regulating it? Because we don't want to get in and have 3 or 4 governments regulating something.
Mr.
And
Enns,
what's the reason?
Mr. Enns, all I'm talking about is one thing. Why should you as a city, and this is a very important, this is the truth, this is like very important to me. Why should the city tell that person as a business what they should charge? I don't care about the regulations. Regulations are different. I'm talking why are we as a council and as a corporation in the business of telling people what they should charge? And I'm going to give you an example before you answer that. So let's say, for example, I want a cheeseburger in this town. I have a choice. I can go to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger for $1.99, or I can go to Fatburger and get a cheeseburger for $12.99. If the burger place came to me, if McDonald's came to you guys and said, you know what, I don't think Fatburger should be charging $12.99. There should be a maximum. There should be a maximum. I know what you guys would say. It's none of our business. We'll let that take. Why is the cab industry any different?
So, Deputy Mayor Parker, we're moving a bit into debate here.
I know, but I need to.
So if we could get you back to your question, please.
So that is my question. Why are we in the pricing business? The regulations is different. I want to separate regulations.
And that has been at the request of the industry that there is a regulated fare and rate. And then it's been the responsibilities of either taxi commissions or municipal government agencies or departments to manage that request. So to date, I don't have a record of when the taxi industries were created in Lethbridge, but that was part of the bylaw that was created at that time. And the request at this point in time was not to deregulate the taxi industry and get rid of the rate maximum. It really was just to answer the questions that were proposed for our department to evaluate.
Okay, so the answer I'm hearing is it's always been like that?
No, the answer to that is industry created this system of guidelines a very long time ago, and not just in the city of Lethbridge. It exists in the taxi industries in pretty much every city, and there hasn't been a deregulation of that. Now with the advent of ride sharing, that's changing the industry.
So the industry created it. Is it our job to be the face of it?
Our job is to regulate, to moderate the regulations that are currently in existence.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a good conversation. We've always had the same every 4 years we have this conversation, and you guys do a great job. So, but at the end of the day, it's up to council to change it. And you guys are just doing the will of council, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So, Mr. Enns, Mr. Henley, I just have a couple questions myself here. So, in comparing the request from the taxi industry that we got, I believe that was in September, correct? To what we've got in front of us today, what we are looking at doing is accommodating those minimum requests, right? So when I compare the two, the minimum amount requests that the taxi industry has put forward has been accommodated in what we're looking at today.
Okay.
Yes. So that they had identified a number of requests within that.
Yep.
And we've vetted each one of those, and we are supporting as much as administration believes we can support.
Okay, so we are supporting their minimum requests. What we're not supporting is the maximum request, and some of the consultation you did indicated that they wouldn't be going up to the maximum amount.
Can I clarify that question again?
Yes, please.
So,
Yep.
if you're talking about minimum, I'm interpreting what you're saying by minimum, is each individual request that they've asked for?
Yeah, so when I look at, when I compare September's request of bylaw 6.15, 6A2, change from 31 cents to 37 cents per eighth kilometer, that was their request in September, and the only change on that is the maximum end of that is 34 cents.
That's
As
correct.
opposed to. So we've accommodated the minimum requests, it's the maximum request that we are dropping down a bit based on a comparison from September's request to what we've got in front of us.
I'm having a hard time following your question. So when I look at the taxi rate industry, we do not have a minimum taxi rate that needs to be charged. We have a maximum taxi rate. Now, the only people that have a minimum taxi rate is the city of Red Deer, and they have no maximum. But they have asked for a number of other provisions. So what we've accommodated is we've taken a look at what the maximum, what the requested maximum rate was,
Yep.
which is that 37 cents per 1/8 of a kilometer.
Yep,
We've reviewed information from all other municipalities compared to their recent rate increases, and we've come up with an alternate number of 34 cents per 1/8 of a kilometer, which is consistent with the increases seen in each of the recent increases seen in each of the other communities reviewed.
okay, so they can charge a range from 31 cents to 34 cents then?
Well, no, it's just a maximum. They can charge as low as they want.
Okay.
We're
so
not, yeah, we're not in
We're
that
going up
area.
to,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry. I
okay,
know.
that makes.
I know, we've got a lot of numbers there. It's kind of confusing.
No, it was looking, because when you look at it, it looks like there's a range there. Okay,
And I'll-
that makes sense. It's just we've lowered that upper number.
Yes, their
Yes.
request, what we're recommending, it's up to council to decide. They've come in with a request for this amount, or at least
Yep.
some of the individuals from the taxi industry came in. We looked at it, we compared it with others, we compared it with, previous bumps and everything else, and then we've come back and we've recommended a lower rate.
Okay.
But you'll also know there was a few other questions there about, top lights and stuff. And the one.
About to get to those.
Yeah, okay.
So, with regards to the 16 kilometers, where did that come from? So, we've got support a maximum meter rate increases identified below, retrips in Lethbridge and within 16 kilometers. Where did the 16 kilometers come from? Because that was not in the initial request from the cab companies.
That might have been, we just looked at all of the rates and looked at reviewing all of the rates that are listed within the bylaw. So there's two different rates that can be charged by a
yeah.
taxi cab company?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that was the 16 kilometers pre-existing in the
That- that they
bylaw, or
had.
is that new? And how did we come up with 16 kilometers?
Well, it is in their initial request to review the out-of-town rates.
Yeah, but the 16 kilometers, you've got a very specific retrips in Lethbridge and within 16 kilometers. That's a very specific ask. And then you have retrips outside of Lethbridge, an area above. I'm just wondering how we came up with the 16 kilometer.
Kilometers is listed within the bylaw, where you
Okay.
have to use a meter.
Okay, so,
For 16 kilometers, you're not required, whether that's in the city or out of the city, and predominantly, most of the trips that are over 16 kilometers are outside of the city.
or outside of the city, was that something we came up with, or was that something that the cab companies came up with initially?
16-kilometer trip, that
Yep.
has been in the bylaw for as long as I can remember.
Okay. And then they also requested a change, a surcharge for $4 van requests. And I see we do not include that in what we're putting forward here. Why have we decided not to include the van requests?
There are a number of companies that, outside of the people that came and presented, that did not want that because all they had was a van. And they didn't, they didn't want people to think, oh, the vans are more expensive and our vehicle's gonna be more expensive. So there was a few that said they did not want that.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from council at this point?
If I may,
Friends, yeah.
Madam Chair? I just wanted to point out one thing. There is one thing in our report that wasn't the record. Like, what we did was analyze the request from the taxi companies that came and presented. There's one thing we added, and that's the $30 taxi inspection fee. And the reason why we've added that is for a number of reasons. One is it's been direction in this city for a while now, since the KPMG study and the like, to look at places that maybe people should be paying a user fee or a fee for services in some respect. And we do, our offices do a lot of time to do these inspections and the like. A number of other cities charge a lot more, $90, $100 and the like. We thought it was a nominal fee. You know, it respected the time taken to do all the reviews and the inspections and some of the materials and supplies we take to actually do it. And we put that in there as direction we've had to try and find places where, you know, there can be user fees or fees where industries may take some of the burden off the taxpayer, and that's why that's in there. It's just a general direction we've had in the last few years to look for stuff such as that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Campbell, you have a question for
Well,
that?
I just wondered, are we allowed to ask questions of someone who's in the cab industry?
I'm actually going to ask if they want to come forward and speak.
Sure.
And speak to that. So do we have anybody in the audience with the cab industry who'd like to come forward and speak? Please come forward and state your name so that we can get that on the record, please.
Was this thing on? Yeah, there we go. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Arend. I am co-owner of 94 Cabs, and as of November 1st last year, co-owner of Fifth Avenue Cabs.
Okay. And we have 5 minutes if you'd like to speak to the issue.
So I've reviewed the recommendations as well, and for the most part, given that we operate under the system we do, where we are regulated by the city, I think most of them are fairly reasonable. They're not necessarily everything that we asked for. However, the items that we did ask for were increases to maximums and weren't necessarily requirements that had to be charged. So in the case of a $4 van charge, right now that opportunity doesn't exist because it's not in the bylaws and it doesn't allow us to charge that. Adding it to the bylaws gives us the option whether we wish to or not. Whether competitors wish to charge that, they have that option as well. With the rate increases, the same thing. All we're doing is lifting a maximum. Are cab companies going to charge that? Not necessarily. The increased charges are there as an opportunity to increase our rates at such a time that we deem fit. Right now, we're looking at a situation we're paying roughly about $1.30 for fuel. It is significantly lower in recent months, but it wasn't that long ago, last summer, just prior to our first meeting, that we were paying in the $1.90s. Lethbridge is typically one of the highest, if not the highest, as far as fuel expenses in the province of Alberta. It must be expensive to truck the gas down here. Giving us the opportunity to increase charges is one way of recovering these costs. Drivers pay for their own fuel. It's not the cab companies that pay for them. Each taxi driver is a business unto himself. He is a contractor, not an employee. They lease a vehicle or they operate a vehicle. They pay for fuel. And they clean the car. These are expenses that the drivers themselves bear. This model is set up with every taxi company in the city of Lethbridge. So when the fuel goes up to $1.90, and we're at $1.30 now, but I'm pretty confident that after May long, we're going to be up again. It's the drivers who are earning the income that are paying these crazy fuel costs. So we really wanted to look at having the maximum, especially given the amount of time that it takes to get a rate increase. We formulated our application back in July. We made an application in September. We're now in February. That's a long time to go while waiting for the opportunity to increase the rates. Personally, one of the items I'm a little disappointed with is that we're still including the requirement for top lights. Top lights damage vehicles. They're expensive to replace, wiring to install. And when we resell our vehicles, the tops of our roofs are scratched up and make the vehicle look far worse a condition than it is. This depreciates the value of the vehicle. I think there's alternate methods that we can identify the cars. As the owner of 94 cabs, if you can't see one of my green cabs coming down the road, I suggest you go see an optometrist. You know, a top light isn't going to make the difference. It might at night increase a bit, but there are other options. There's interior lights. You know, safety was cited, but in the last 3 years, we've had 2 taxis that have been taken over, the driver forced out, the driver robbed, and the cars were taken off with. Highly visible, identifiable taxis. Taxi company happened to be Royal Taxi with the biggest signs in town. One of those incidents was this year. So this sort of, there's 2 sides to every argument. I'm probably at my 5 minutes. I would imagine I should probably hush up.
Were there any final thoughts you wanted to add?
I'm glad that you're considering our requests of increases. Probably the only thing I'd like to see additionally is the possibility of fuel surcharge, more so than an actual rate increase of 18%. I think a fuel surcharge is something that can be optionally added when the fuel does spike up. It's about the only thing I've got. It's not in our initial application, but at the end of the day, council's free to make the changes they see fit.
Okay, I see I've got a few lined up in the queue for, with questions for you. Councillor Middleton Hope?
Thank you, and I recognize that you only represent your company, and you're not speaking for any of the other businesses in town. But I'm wondering if there is currency in getting the taxi cab companies together to work through a process whereby we might examine how the city is administering this bylaw and whether or not there are better ways to provide for some controls that speak to things like safety and the clients that you serve versus the controls that we are trying to grapple with in terms of controlling your industry. Is there currency in doing that?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I'd love to see everybody come together. I phoned a number of our competitors to join me here today.
I see they're banging at the door.
It's a long line to get in. A lot of my competition are smaller companies, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 cars. Right now, I represent about 50% of the cabs in the city of Lethbridge, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure how close to being accurate, but it's probably pretty close. That means that the remaining 8, 9 companies make up the other 50%. So the companies are small and they're all working right now. But I'd love to see all of us get together and hash out what sort of safety regulations we have. I'd love to see age limitations on vehicles, regular inspections. That's the kind of thing I think needs to be dealt with, maybe even more so than rates.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here and discussing this. I guess my big question is, you know, as to Councillor Parker and Middleton Hope saying, you know, why are we in the game? What if we just if there was no regulations from City Council, what in your experience, what will that become? Will it become the end of us, or is this you know, is it going to be a positive way going forward if there's no regulation from the city in your opinion?
I think there needs to be definitely some sort of a relationship. Regulation of safety is huge, right? The meter rates, the market's going to work itself out. As Mr. Henley stated, we do have a fairly open market here, where anybody can start a cab company provided they meet what they need to for the requirements, and competition sorts out the rest. It's why 94 Cabs, a company that's 4 years old, is holding the majority share of traffic and business in this town. We've had the ability to do so. I think getting everybody together and governing together as an industry is harder. And having the guidance and oversight from the city has historically been the case, and it's easy to hang on to history.
So is the answer you like to have the regulations as we have them right now, or would you like to say, would you like to see us say, we're done, move on, get your own association, do it your own self?
Are you asking me to represent the industry or
No,
personally?
I guess just your opinion, because you.
Personally, I'd like to see something that's a little bit more blended.
So kind of a safety regulations from council, and then.
Well, regular interaction between the city and the industry, right? It's good business. When government and industry work together, usually most people win.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Palladino?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again for being here. And this is along the same lines as my colleagues, the question here. I understand you support this, basically, it's a price cap that's been put upon you, or that will be put upon you. And then at the same time, I heard you say it takes a lot of time to get approval for an increase. So I was wondering, wouldn't it be easier if there wasn't any price cap, and when you need an increase, you take an increase, and you maybe discuss it with your peers?
I understand the price cap. But I understand that usually the market will sort itself out. I understand the arguments for deregulation. The problem when you have that is there are individuals who will come in and take advantage of it. That won't just be in the taxi industry, that happens all over. And I think we're all familiar with that. Generally, the bigger businesses and the businesses who wish to conduct long-term business, they'll stay within the bounds of reason. 94 Cabs has not operated at the maximum. We're one notch down. We've done so for competition levels. But we understand that we have the ability to go to the maximum should we desire. So it's, right now, our biggest thing is having the option to do so.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, is, I thought I heard you say that it takes you a lot of time to get approval for an increase, a lot of time and effort.
Well, for us, this started back in June, July, so.
You're asking for an increase?
Well, the ladies who originated or started this process or this application started talking back in July. 94 Cabs was asked to join as well, and the process has gone on since then. We've written up a proposal, submitted it. We had a date in September. Administrations had to conduct their review and investigations. It's taken a fair bit of time.
Right, so it would be logical then, if there was no price cap, it wouldn't take any time to have an increase.
That's true.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much for being here in the weeks and the months before that as well. Shouldn't say weeks, months before that. You're a successful entrepreneur. And
I hope so.
and congratulations. Does it bother you as a successful entrepreneur that a government is telling you the most you could charge? Does that kind of go against being an entrepreneur?
It does, but I understand both sides of the argument. Do I like it or do I support it? Not necessarily. But I don't think the industry's in a position to go from regulation to deregulation.
Okay, I want to make sure we're using, regulation to me is making sure the meter runs right, making sure you have a business license, making sure you're doing operating safely, you're operating a vehicle, inspection, all that. That's regulations to me. I totally believe that someone has to be there to protect the consumer, but also protect the company, make sure they're.
Absolutely.
Now,
Earlier, you differentiated with price.
Now, my questions are all about price, the price. So the regulation part, I don't like to, don't use that word, okay? Because the price cap. Let's say you run a good business and all that, and you've been successful, obviously, you've grown and all that. And let's say you want to operate and we have this great experience, the leather chairs inside, they give you a back massage, we got the whole thing, but I can't do it at this price. The only way I can make that happen is I'd have to charge an extra $2. So at the end of the day, you're creating a better experience than your competition. But by having a price like that set, you go, I can't do it, I can't do it. Do you know what I'm saying? And then you also talk about price surcharge, like fuel surcharge. You should be able to charge a fuel surcharge because if it costs you more, you charge more. Just like if McDonald's price of meat goes up, they have to charge more for meat. They don't come back to go to government saying, can I charge more for my hamburgers? Do you know where I'm going with this?
I agree, yeah.
Thank you. You've answered my question. No more questions, Madam Chairman.
Does anybody else have any questions for either our administrative team or our taxi cab company representative? Okay. So just in looking at this and in speaking with Councillor Campbell, because this is his motion, we've reviewed what we have, the motion in front of us. But I would like council to weigh in on, representatives of the committee to weigh in on this, adding to the resolution and further direct administration to prepare an amending bylaw to capture said changes, and further direct administration to provide a report on the future of taxi regulation to the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee by Q3, and further that taxi companies be engaged as part of that report. So that's what we're looking at adding to this resolution. Do members of the committee feel that that captures some of the discussion that we've had, or would we like to change that, add that, make any changes to this further? Janessa is going to bring it up on the screen for us here. All right? Yeah. Oh, and I see Councillor Carlson has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And now that it's up on the screen, I may be able to answer my question myself. So, but I'm just curious: is the resolution to recommend that council approve what's in front of us today?
Yes.
But then do further work?
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Just in speaking with legal counsel, which we obviously missed, but I think it's important, is in terms of the consumer, what role might they play in any future discussions around regulating the industry, and whether or not, including members of the public, the consumers, whether that would be an appropriate amendment to this motion?
So we would look at further direct administration to provide a report on the future of taxi regulation and taxi companies be engaged. So that last portion would include that public engagement.
I think if there's a place there for the public to be able to participate in some fashion, they ultimately are the ones that will determine whether or not any regulations, any regulating mechanism that's put in place to manage the fares that are charged, they're ultimately the ones that are going to decide whether it's appropriate or not, whether they continue to use taxis or whether they use on-demand services from the city.
Councillor Carlson, do you have another question?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I must have left my hand up. Thank you.
All good, all good. Do any other members of council have any questions? Deputy Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me first state that I thank you very much for answering my questions to our administrative team, and as well as thank you for answering the questions. So if this wasn't supported, it would stay status quo. Am I correct, Mr. Enns?
So if our recommendations today weren't supported, yes, it would be status quo for sure.
And a member of council, so if we really wanted to get out of the pricing part of this, any member of council who is even not on this committee could bring a resolution, a directional resolution to city council to give direction to amend it in regards to that. Am I correct?
You are correct, yes.
No, but no, my report is to come back to Q3.
Can I just make one comment on that? Okay. Which is great, this is fantastic, though I just have to let you know what we're facing as a department of 7 people. We have a number of reports. We've been trying to start a whole review of bylaws. We have a whole review of animal shelters coming up. We've got a drone report coming up. We have a number of new positions that we haven't been able to actually go out and get yet because we've been too busy for it. So if it's the will of council to do a report like this, we would probably request help from other departments, maybe some public service percentages, departments that work with the public and the like, because we can't keep up as it is. Like, we have too many reports, we have huge reports, and we're gonna miss some deadlines here. So I just wanted to point that out there. I'm not arguing whatever. I think it's a good idea if that's the route you wanna go. I'm just saying, our little department is stretched right now to the limit.
And I appreciate that. And that's, I think you're talking about if this resolution was to pass, what the consequences, but I'm saying is.
That's the correct. I just wanted to let people know that we would need assistance with that.
But a member of council, and I could direct this through the deputy city clerk, is I could bring a resolution that council no longer remain in the pricing aspect of that. And that could be something that could be amended instantly. You wouldn't need a report back or nothing like that. That would happen instantly if passed. Or I could ask, am I correct in that?
You could give us instructions to prepare a set of amendments on that meet whatever policy goal you're doing. If what we're hearing, I mean, there's different considerations to weigh. If what we're hearing is we don't have the capacity to do it by Q3, we could either stop doing other work and do that. We could take longer, like perhaps a longer period of time to do that. It all depends on what you want.
Okay.
But if you gave us direction today to bring back a set of amendments that met policy goal A, B, and C, we could do that. That's anticipated with whether you approve this particular recommendation or you have a different recommendation, we're going to be doing the work to prepare some amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Lowen. So I could bring a resolution to amend the bylaw that we no longer be in this certain aspect of it and everything else stays as is. I could give that at a council meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question, not sure if I direct it to Mr. Enns or not. Mr. Lowen was just talking about it may take some more time. And thank you for expressing the limitations, because quite often council just says, get it done. And we don't take into account the HR impacts. If this was passed, because what I'm hearing is the cab companies have been asking for this since last June. So I think it may be beholden on us to move speedily. So if these changes were passed, would a year from now be too long to do the work that's being proposed in the resolution?
Well, if I may ask a couple questions, what are we talking about? Not having a cap at all? Is that what we're talking about? Because as we mentioned before, that would mainly mean we'd be out of the business, would it not?
I think that if I can follow along, what I've heard is to approve the proposal going forward with the rate increases, and then alternately look at disposing of the rates within the bylaw. If from a practical application standpoint, I can say you're doing the work multiple times if you're doing it that way. And that it's not just the work on our department's behalf, but it's the work on behalf of industry. So creating an increased rate and getting that structure in place and having the taxi cabs that want to increase that rate, inspected, deckled, and approved. And then alternately, if the decision is to get out of the business of the rates of the bylaw specifically, or the rates of the taxis, that is a more expedient decision. And it alleviates work on both the industry aspect as well as the city of Lethbridge. So what I'm saying is, if you're asking for tiered, if the consensus is that there is concern about the city being involved in the business of regulating the rate of taxis, then I think that's something that may be addressed separately and individually, as opposed to the rest of the regulations under the bylaw for the taxi industry. I can say that the largest portion of work that is on the business owner's end, as well as the city of Lethbridge end, is the inspection of the regulated rate and adherence to that. There is a cost to that. So when a cab has to be inspected, the meter has to be installed, and there's an expense on the business owner's end of that. And then there's an expense to have the meter calibrated, either by somebody that is an industry professional, has experience doing it, or by the cab company themselves. And then the product that goes into sealing the taxi cab and the time to do that. If I can make any recommendation, rather than making step directions that may not go if you're going to end up at the place where there's an unregulated rate portion of the cab, have that conversation first.
Okay, thank you. Further question, if I can, Madam Chair. I wasn't sure I heard correctly. Mr. Enns, I believe it was you who mentioned that there was another city who got out of the business of regulating the rates. Was that, and they were experiencing some issues that you couldn't go into. Is that correct?
There's one city, yes, that doesn't have a maximum rate, and they talk to us in confidentiality, but that may not be going forward, yes.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate they want to remain, have confidentiality intact. Is that something you could share with this committee or council in closed session?
I might ask my director that question. Is that something that...
I think an intergovernmental confidence that could damage intergovernmental relations would qualify as an exception under FOIP, and so you would be entitled to go in camera and ask that question. Not knowing the circumstances in which it was disclosed to Mr. Enns, I would leave it to him to be able to tell us if that would be appropriate to share even in that case, depending on what the understanding of the sharer was.
Sorry, I was not the one. We had someone doing the survey and talking to them and the like that's not in this room right now, so we wouldn't even be able to go in camera right now to get that information. They're probably out doing a call as we speak.
Okay. It's unfortunate. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you. And in light of Mr. Enns talking about reports, and because sometimes we fail to realize as members of City Council, we do reports, there's hundreds of hours that can be put in these reports at the stroke of a pen. So I want to be cautious of that, and I appreciate being candid about it. So the two things that I heard and through is getting out of the pricing cap thing would not be a big issue, only from one stakeholder, but a big stakeholder in the community. Another one is the toppers. You know, I'm thinking like Uber. Uber doesn't have toppers. Uber just has a little U in the window, and you know it's Uber, right? So do we need to do a report on this, or can we just do, can council come with two things that we want changed and then everything else stays the same at a council meeting?
Certainly, if you're listening to the information and you feel that, because I can certainly understand where Starve is coming from. I mean, you buy a vehicle and it's somewhat damaged or whatever, and you want to upgrade it. Say you're selling that you got newer vehicles than everyone else, and you can't get as good a resale value. That's fine. What we did on that particular one, and some of them have the magnets, right? You don't have to drill it in. You know, just put magnets on top of the vehicles, and you can take it off. The reason we made that recommendation is because we asked that question specifically, and it was like 66% of the respondents said, no, we want to keep that on there. And also, that was put in because there was some incident or whatever, that someone didn't identify a cab and an incident happened where someone got into a cab thinking it wasn't a cab, and so that was put in as a safety regulation. However, if council decides that, if they listen to the comments here and say, you know what, we really shouldn't be in that business, that's certainly up to council to do, you bet.
And but also, and I appreciate this, and tell me if you agree with, I'll put this in the form of a question. If you go out to competition, they've already invested, let's say, thousands upon thousands of dollars on putting these things on their roof. Of course, they're gonna say, yeah, please keep that, because if you now allow more competition without that regulation, well, you've created less barrier to entry, so of course they have a vested interest.
Certainly.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree that that could be one of their answers, yeah, the reasons why they said, you bet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do we have any amendments coming to this motion as it currently stands? And Deputy Mayor Parker, I sense that you would like to switch some stuff up.
And thank you very much. That's why you are the chairman. You sense of this stuff. I would like to add an amendment that city council, or not city, but the city of Lethbridge no longer regulate the pricing of rates within the taxi industry in the city of Lethbridge, as well as no topper, but some marking has to be on the vehicle, which I think, but no topper. Can we capture that within this?
So let's take a five
Take five minutes
let's
to-
take
yeah.
a 5 to 10 minute break here, and we will work through that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we're ready to get started back on this again. After some discussion, what we're going to do is we're going to postpone this issue to the next meeting, the next community safety meeting in March, which will happen on March 9th. So can I have a motion to postpone this item until then? Deputy Mayor Parker?
It's surprising you say it because I won't be here on March 9th. I just looked at my, I know. But anyway, yeah, I feel that if we're going to do this, we want to do it right, and I appreciate the work that our administration team's done. So instead of doing this rushed, I would make a resolution that we postpone it, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so we have a resolution. Do we have any questions on that?
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Thank you very much. So that, oh, sorry, Councillor Carlson, though, you had a question?
Sorry, Madam Chair, just briefly, and I know that the one representative of the industry is there. I know they've been trying to get these changes since last June. Is this going to pose any issues for them?
I don't believe so. I'd even support this to do it right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, we have a motion to postpone, and that's been passed. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to go into closed session, please? Councillor Campbell, all in favor? Thank you very much. We will now go into closed session.
Call for the vote.
All right, everyone, we are ready to resume after our closed session here. So I have a motion from Councillor Campbell out of the closed meeting, intermunicipal matter. Verbal, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee directs that the closed meeting discussions pursuant to the intermunicipal matter verbal remain confidential pursuant to sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Campbell.
Call for the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? Thank you very much. And our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. No.